This is the first screencast about the history and globalization of English. It will deal with everything that came before English, so it will stretch from a long time ago in prehistory up till around the year 500. English can trace its roots all the way back to the Stone Age and a people called the Indo-Europeans. They lived in Eastern Europe and started spreading to the Middle East and continued spreading to much of Europe, as we can see in the map there. The spreading of the Indo-Europeans through time, and no one knows exactly what their language was like, but many European languages are thought to originate from it. These Indo-European languages start spreading as the people start spreading. They search for new places to gather food, to hunt animals, and as they start to spread, isolation creates language groups. And these language groups are divided further into the languages that are now spoken by almost half of the population of the modern world. Most of Europe, North and South America, Australia, Asia, the Middle East, much of South Asia as well. In Europe, it's only the Basque language, spoken by a group of people in Spain, along with Finnish, Estonian, Hungarian, Turkish. These are not Indo-European languages, the only languages that are not Indo-European within Europe. So if we take a look at this language tree, which shows all the Indo-European languages, in the top left corner we'll see the Germanic language group, where we find English and the Scandinavian languages. We can see here that English is quite closely related to Danish, but also to German and Dutch. And if we go a little further back, we'll see that there is also a relation to French and many of the Romance languages in Southern Europe, and all kinds of other languages, including those spoken in Eastern Europe, the Baltic, and Indian languages also. We can see this common background in how closely the words for father, brother, and me are when we see them in like German and Latin and Greek and Sanskrit and Old Norse and stuff like that. The words look a lot like each other. So this Germanic branch of the language tree that I mentioned, more specifically, we have a group of West Germanic languages: Dutch, German, English, and something called Frisian. And this group is slightly different from the North Germanic languages, like East Scandinavian, West Scandinavian. Some of the earliest Germanic words are actually still used in their modern English forms. For example, sea and land and strand and oats and lamb and sheep and hound. So these words for the natural environment, farming, farm animals, these very basic things, the Germanic words are still used for those. Something else before English, which is very important, is Celtic. The Celtic people are the earliest people to live in Britain that we really know anything about. They're also known as Britons, and they started to move into Britain around 800 BC, so 800 before the birth of Christ. And around 300 BC, they were the group of Indo-Europeans that were most widespread. It was also the main culture in Britain. However, Celtic is not the basis for modern English language. Some of it does survive today though. For example, place names, London, York, and so on. And also the languages of Scotland, Ireland, and Wales actually have Celtic origin. So the Celtic influence continues to sort of live on there. We also need to talk about the Romans. They came to Britain around 55 before Christ. That's when they first showed up. And they began to stay there and occupy Britain permanently around 43 before Christ. After this, Britain was part of the Roman Empire for almost 500 years. So a lot of mixing was going on between Romans and Celtic people. The Romans never really got into Ireland or Scotland, though. And that's what we see here on the map, is the Roman Empire. In the year 117 AD. AD is short for Anno Domini, which means the year of God. So that's after the birth of Christ. As we can see all the green stuff in Britain there. At this time, though, Roman influence on the English language was pretty small. This was going to change, of course, when Latin started to play a much bigger role with Christianity, for example. But most of the words that are still used, which come from the Roman occupation, came from Roman traders. So cheese, pepper, kettle, kitchen, anchor, belt, chest, pound. These trading words, so to speak. But the Romans abandoned Britain to the Celts again in 410 to 436 AD. And they started sort of gradually leaving so that they could protect their home from attacks by other tribes, other groups of people from Northern Europe. So to sum up all this stuff that came before English, we had the Indo-European people, which explains why English is part of the Indo-European language group. More specifically, the Germanic branch, which means it has a lot in common with German and the Scandinavian languages. Also, we had the Celtic people coming to Britain, explaining why different languages from English are also spoken in Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. And lastly, we had the Roman occupation. And the last thing to happen before the English language really gets started is that the Romans leave again.